4, 3, 2, 1.
Studio Classroom is
Record.
Studio Classroom. Studio Classroom.
Please stand by.
A classic. Studio Classroom. Studio Classroom. Studio Classroom.
Studio Classroom is on the air.
Hello and welcome to Studio Classroom on the air. This is the place to come when you want to have some fun. And of course, your English will improve today. My name is Gabe. And here's a question for you. Do you like stories that make you use your imagination? Stories that have events and creatures that don't exist in the real world? These kinds of stories are called fantasies. The name of our lesson today is The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. There have been several movies made about the Narnia stories, and of course they are based on books. These stories are famous in the English-speaking world, perhaps as famous or more than even The Lord of the Rings, 魔戒. Well, when you read these stories, you let your imagination run wild. What does that mean? Let's find out, okay?
The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Welcome to Narnia, where animals talk like people and children are kings and queens. Books open up new worlds to readers. They can certainly find an exciting new world in C.S. Lewis' The Chronicles of Narnia. All 7 books in the series revolve around Lewis' fantasy world called Narnia. It's the perfect setting to allow people's imaginations to run wild. Even though Narnia is a fictional land full of magical creatures, it bears a striking resemblance to our own world. Each Narnia book is filled with new, unexpected friendships, challenges to overcome, as well as personal victories.
Hi everyone, welcome to Language Lab. 这篇文章的第一个重点，我们看 revolve 这个动词 ，re 这个字首有再一次的意思。Volve 这个字根是指转或卷，所以 revolve 本来是指自转或旋转。例如 Venus revolves around the sun faster than the earth does。金星绕太阳公转的速度比地球快。课文中的 revolve around someone or something 是指以某个对象为主，或者是以他为中心环绕。例如 Henry's whole life revolves around his work. He barely takes time off.Henry 整个人生是以工作为重心，他几乎是不休息的。接下来我们看 fictional 这个形容词 ，fictional 是指虚构的、想象的或者是小说式的。例如 Mark likes to read fictional stories to release pressure. Mark 喜欢读虚构的故事来释放压力，或者是 Children tend to identify with fictional characters in superhero movies. 小朋友容易认同超级英雄电影中虚构的人物。它的名词是去掉字尾的 al 变成 fiction， 意思是指小说类，它是一个集合名词。例如 The author's latest work of science fiction was a great success。 这位作者最新的科幻小说非常成功。如果加上 non 这个否定的字首， non-fiction 是指非小说类或者是写实类的作品。例如 The book ranked number 1 in non-fiction last month。这本书上个月是非小说类作品的销售冠军。
Thank you very much, Michelle. Friends, you see in the studio today, Zach is back. He was just with us a few days ago when we were talking about Steph Curry. Zach, it's great to have you again.
Great to be back in the studio.
And this lesson is very different from our lesson about the famous basketball player. Now we're talking about a famous set or series of books. Mm-hmm. Did you enjoy writing about this as much as you enjoyed writing about a basketball player?
Well, I really love both topics. I think there's loads of things and information to learn from both topics. So, for me, sports is kind of my first love, so it's hard to
compare, right?
it is.
Yeah,
Sure.
But I'm glad that you tackled this topic today and that we're reading about this famous series of books. I would recommend these books to anybody. Okay, The Chronicles of Narnia. Now, before we continue, what does that word chronicle mean? That's not a word that I use every day.
No, you don't hear it too often, but it just is basically a record of events. Or it might be a historical account filled with different facts and details. And so for this instance, we're talking about the chronicles of this place called Narnia.
Okay, so it's a fictitious place. It's not a real place, but the writer is writing in a way that gives you a feeling of, okay, this is still interesting to learn about the history or the fake history of this place. This word can also be a verb. You can chronicle something. That means you are writing down the events of something as they happen. Actually, this word makes me think of a book in the Bible, 2 books in the Old Testament, 1st and 2nd Chronicles.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, a written record or an account of things that have happened and with lots of details.
Yeah, that's right. So there are 7 books in this series, The Chronicles of Narnia. The first is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Welcome to Narnia, where animals talk like people and children are kings and queens. Now, Zach, how does the lesson continue?
Books open up new worlds to readers. They can certainly find an exciting new world in C.S. Lewis' The Chronicles of Narnia. All 7 books in this series revolve around Lewis's fantasy world called Narnia.
Okay, great. I want to stop you right there because that word fantasy, yes, Narnia can be described as a fantasy world. However, used in a different way, fantasy in Chinese you might say 幻想. But when we're talking about literature, friends, fantasy has a specific meaning, and that is it's imaginative literature, including supernatural or fictional events and characters. So not only do I think of Narnia, but I also think of like The Lord of the Rings. That's also fantasy, right?
That's true. And we're going to see that book come up later in the article.
That's right. Okay, so we continue here. It's the perfect setting, that is Narnia, is the perfect setting to allow people's imaginations to run wild. Now, I love this phrase, but we don't usually use the word run in this sense, Zach. So what does it mean if your imagination runs wild?
Well, earlier you mentioned, this is fantasy, and so you're using your imagination, but you want to use it freely. And so here, just this idea is to explore it freely.
Okay, so exploring freely, and I also, basically, when you're reading a book, if a book is well written, then it really does let your imagination start to think freely and maybe even run wild, or even listening to certain kinds of music. I like listening to an artist named Chris Thiele. He's a musician, and his lyrics just make my imagination kind of run wild, and it's pretty great. But our lesson continues here about Narnia. Even though Narnia is a fictional land full of magical creatures, it bears a striking resemblance to our own world. So why did you choose that phrase, Zach? It bears a striking resemblance?
Well, basically, it just means that there is a similarity, that there is kind of metaphors that you'll see run throughout his writing, Lewis's writing, that it bears a striking resemblance, just meaning that, so to bear means to kind of endure or to have the right to, and then this word striking is very attractive, and then the word resemblance is just to be like something, and so it looks very similar to the world that we find ourselves in.
That's right. Almost too similar, I guess some people might say. You might think, okay, this author is maybe even trying to describe things that are happening in the real world.
Right.
Well, what else might bear a striking resemblance to something else? Of course, twins. This person bears a striking resemblance to that person because, after all, they are twins. But I don't know about you, Zach. I've heard of people who use this phrase, maybe a teacher, when they're looking at the tests their students wrote, and they think, all of these answers of Tom's bear a striking resemblance to all the answers of Fred's.
A little suspicious.
Yeah, I wonder if someone cheated. So you could use this phrase in different ways. But I like this phrase here at the end of this section, Zach. You said personal victories. Now, what is a personal victory?
Well, just think of a personal accomplishment, or maybe it's a goal that one has set, So sometimes we'll use this phrase getting a win, a small win, and it just means, to accomplish that thing.
Okay, so friends, what is a personal victory of yours? What is something that you feel really proud about? That is your personal victory. Talk about that in English. Right now it's time for us to go to the Info Cloud.
Hello friends, welcome to Info Cloud. Today we're going to look at an animal-inspired idiom. Watch someone or something like a hawk.
This is a really great idiom to use when you want to express the idea of watching something very closely.
For example, if a museum has a valuable painting, you could say, the museum's guards watch that painting like a hawk.
Or, the shopkeeper watched his customers like a hawk because he was afraid someone would steal something from his shop.
Based on these examples, you can see that this phrase can be used to talk about both people and things. But why do we say hawk instead of some other animal?
A good question. Hawks have very good eyesight and are able to see objects clearly even when they are very far away.
So, if you watch something the way a hawk watches something, then you can see it very clearly, even if you are far away.
今天分享的这个用语相当特别 ，watch something or someone like a hawk， 意思就是像老鹰一样非常仔细地监视着一样东西或是一个人。The guards at the Louvre watched the Mona Lisa painting like a hawk。罗浮宫的警卫像老鹰般地监视着蒙娜丽莎的微笑。Hawk 就是老鹰的一种。我们都知道，老鹰的眼睛非常锐利，可以从非常远的距离看到猎物。因此，当有人 watch something like a hawk， 就代表他眼睛睁得大大的，目不转睛的监视着一样物品。这就是今天的 Info Cloud， 我们下次云端见。
Studio Classroom.
Studio Classroom is on the air.
Welcome back to Studio Classroom. We're learning with a lesson called The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Of course, these are classic stories, classic kids' stories, but the author would say that a good kid's story is not only for kids to appreciate. In fact, these stories are stories for everybody to enjoy. Okay, so who are the characters in the Narnia stories? Well, let's find out.
The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Meet the Pevensie children. Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy Pevensie discovered the land of Narnia while exploring an old house. Some people have noted how Lewis creatively connects each child's personality with a character trait of an animal. Readers see these traits come out in the children as the story progresses. Peter, like a hawk, is noble and strong. A badger matches Lucy's faithful, friendly, and hard-working personality. Edmund is sly like a fox and not always truthful. And Susan is like a rabbit, shy and sweet.
OK， 继续我们看 trait 这个名词 ，trait 是指特质、特征或品格。例如 ，generosity is a very attractive personality trait. It makes people feel welcome. 慷慨是一种很吸引人的人格特质，能够让周围的人感到被欢迎。或者是 Alex's humorous character trait made him very easy to get along with. Alex 幽默的人格特质让大家很容易跟他相处。Trait 也可以指外形上的特征，例如 Jack has red curly hair, a trait that runs on his father's side. Jack 一头红色的卷发是他父亲这边的家族成员都有的特征。最后我们看的是 sly 这个形容词 ，sly 是指狡猾的或者是奸诈的。例如 ，This con man is a sly old fox. Don't believe a word he says. 这个骗子是个奸诈的老狐狸，他说的话一句也别相信。或者是 The villain in the movie is so sly and deceitful, you can't help but dislike him. 这部电影中的反派角色又奸诈又爱欺骗人，你忍不住会讨厌他。Sly 也可以指心照不宣的，例如 The twin sisters exchanged sly grins as if they knew some big secret. 这对双胞胎姐妹交换了神秘的微笑，仿佛知道了什么天大的秘密。And now let's get back to our teachers.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Okay, friends, let's meet some friends that appear in this book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Now, Zach wrote this lesson. You titled this section, Meet the Pevensie Children.
Right.
Yeah, so I know the word meet often we use to talk about when you are introduced to somebody. Is that the way you used it in our lesson?
Well, sure. I mean, it's just a basic introduction, a way to kind of become acquainted with the topic that we're looking at. And in this case, it is these 4 children.
That's right. So, friends, you can say different things when you're introducing somebody to someone else. You could say, let me introduce you to so-and-so. Or you could simply use this word, meet, right? It's not just used like, oh, it's nice to meet you. You could use it to introduce someone to somebody else. And authors use this often in writing as well. Meet the Pevensie children. So who are the Pevensie children? What do we read?
Well, it says, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy Pevensie discover the land of Narnia while exploring an old house. Some people have noted how Lewis creatively connects each child's personality with a character trait of an animal.
All right, we need to stop right there. Okay, so we've learned a little bit. There's 4 characters here so far. These siblings, they're exploring an old house. And you wrote that Lewis connects each child's personality with a trait of an animal. Can you share a little more about that?
Sure. Well, this phrase kind of to connect with, in this instance, it just means to kind of, he's making a similarity and it's a way to introduce the children, and he connects their personality with that of an animal.
Okay.
So there's this kind of a connection that's made.
Sure. So is it kind of in a way to help the audience or the reader to understand or have a more immediate understanding of what the person is like?
That's right. Exactly right, Gabe.
Okay. So there's different traits of different animals, friends. We read here about different traits. But before we get there, let's talk about a phrase in this next sentence. Okay. Readers see these traits come out in the children as the story progresses. So you know the word come, you know the word out, but together to come out used in this way, what does that mean?
Well, we're talking about that they're going to become apparent, that we will recognize these traits as the story starts to
unfold.
Unfold, right, exactly.
Okay, so here's another way to use that phrase like that. Okay, so Greg's leadership skills come out, or Greg's leadership skills came out when his company encountered a crisis. Sometimes you don't know a certain part about somebody until something terrible happens or until something great happens, and then the different sides of different people come out, and you could see or understand that person even better. But how does our lesson continue here? What about Peter? What's he like?
Well, it says, Peter, like a hawk, is noble and strong. A badger matches Lucy's faithful, friendly, and hardworking personality.
All right, Zach, I think a lot of people know what a hawk looks like or what a hawk is, but a badger is something we haven't talked about much here at Studio Classroom, but it is this animal in this picture. Okay, so that's maybe a hardworking animal, I guess. I don't know much about badgers either, but what about Edmund?
Well, it says Edmund is sly like a fox and not always truthful.
Right. Well, Edmund certainly is a fox. And we read Susan is like a rabbit, shy and sweet. Now, I noticed you used the word like here. Peter is like a hawk. Edmund is like a fox. That's a simile. What is the difference between a simile and a metaphor?
Well, great question, Gabe. So both of these are different kinds of figures of speech, but they're similar in that they both are making a comparison.
Okay.
Now, the major difference is that a simile we'll use like or as.
Okay, so for another example of a simile, maybe you've heard that phrase, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. Or here's a metaphor, love is a battlefield. All right, think of other similes and other metaphors. Talk about them in English. We've learned a little bit about some of the characters from today's lesson. We have more to learn about next time, but right now it's time for the SC Challenge.
Very good, let's do it.
Okay, let's see who today's players are. As you introduce yourselves, tell me, do you prefer fiction or non-fiction?
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda, and I like both fiction and nonfiction, but I think a good combination of that is historical fiction.
Historical fiction, excellent. And our next contestant is?
Well, my name is Brandon, and I prefer nonfiction.
Nonfiction. Friends, what about you? Do you like fiction or nonfiction? Well, the lesson is Narnia, which of course is a work of, well, I shouldn't say anything more because we might be talking about that in some of our questions here. Question number 1. According to the lesson, what is Narnia? A, an imaginary animal. B, a knitting material. Get it? Like yarn. Yarn. Okay. C, a tropical drink. Or D, a fictional land. That was at the exact same time. Hold on a second. I'm going to count to 3 and do it again. 1, 2, 3. Who was higher?
It was definitely me. Definitely me.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes, go ahead, Linda.
So the answer is D.
A fictional land?
Yes.
That is correct. 1 point for Linda, but
Yay.
Brandon, you were right there. Okay. Number 2, what can Narnia allow people's imaginations to do? A, run wild. B, slow down. C, stop. Or D, die. Brandon?
That would be A, run wild.
Yes, I love that phrase. When your imagination runs wild. So Narnia allows people's imaginations to run wild. It's 1-1. Friends, let's see if you can guess this last answer faster than Brandon and Linda do. Number 3, what animal is Edmund compared to in this story? A, a hawk. B, a badger. C, a fox. Or D, a rabbit. Brandon.
I'm going to say D, a rabbit?
D, a rabbit. That's not correct, but why would you guess rabbit?
Because I've seen the movie and I remember a rabbit, but I remember a fox. I just took a guess.
There's a badger in there too. Yeah.
Wait, the rabbit's from Monty Python. That's another
sorry.
one. I don't know. Okay, wait. So, Linda, do you want to guess? The other options are hawk, badger, fox. What is Edmund?
Fox.
He's compared to, right?
I think he's cunning like a fox.
Exactly. That is the correct answer. Edmund is compared to a fox. Linda is today's winner.
Yay.
Thank you both for joining us today. Friends, that is all we have time for today's SC Challenge. Well, our lesson mentions how different characters in this book are compared to different animals, which makes me wonder, have you ever been compared to an animal of some kind? And which animal? When I was in college, one of my friends thought that I was kind of like a lizard. At least she thought that I looked like a lizard. But what about you, friends? Which kind of animal are you compared to and why? Talk about that in English. We'll see you next time for more about the Chronicles of Narnia.
A good friend lasts a lifetime. A friend gives at all times. A friend cares at all times. A friend endures at all times. A good friend lasts a lifetime. I am so proud to have you in my life. A good friend lasts a lifetime.